The Regional Administration of Sumy Oblast, a region in northeastern Ukraine, has clarified their stance on the evacuation of civilians from the 5-kilometer zone around the border with Russia, in light of escalating violence and cross-border artillery attacks from Russian forces. According to Volodymyr Artyuk, the head of the Sumy Regional State Administration, RSA, there will be no compulsory evacuations. Instead, citizens will be allowed to make their own decisions about whether to leave or to stay. If a citizen decides to remain in their homes, they will need to submit a formal statement of refusal. Those who choose to be evacuated will be relocated to safe locations. Artyuk emphasized that the evacuation process will only commence once all the necessary preparations have been made to comfortably accommodate the evacuees. This means ensuring that adequate facilities and resources are in place to handle the influx of displaced people from the border areas. These clarifications came after an initial announcement by Sumy officials on July 10th about a planned evacuation of residents from areas most affected by Russian attacks. This region has been a frequent target of mortar fire from the Russian military, causing significant damage and posing a significant threat to civilian life. Denis Popovich, a military commentator, shared his views on the Freedom TV channel regarding Russia's potential stockpiling of missiles to carry out massive strikes on Ukraine. He speculated that there may be more bombings in the future, and that a pause in bombings currently allows Russia to accumulate missiles for future use. According to Popovich, despite sanctions, Russia circumvents these restrictions and continues to produce missiles at a rate of approximately 2 to 5 units per day. He suggests that the number could potentially be higher due to components being supplied via parallel gray market schemes, making it impossible to completely halt the production of these missiles. By his calculation, Russia could have produced a substantial number of missiles between the last shelling on June 24th and the current date of July 10th. Popovich warns that these stockpiled missiles could be used against peaceful cities and civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. He explains that cruise missiles like the X-555 and X-101 are used for strategic purposes against fixed targets located in the rear. Despite Russian claims of targeting military objectives, many of the missile strikes have been directed against civilian infrastructure, which is impractical to target with cruise missiles given their flight range and the time it takes for them to reach targets on Ukrainian territory. According to Oleksandr Prokudin, head of the Regional Military Administration, Russian forces are continually bombarding residential areas in Kherson, Ukraine. Preliminary reports indicate that at least 2 people have been injured, with one in a serious condition. Prokudin reported that the humanitarian headquarters and at least 5 residential buildings have been hit. Fires have started at the sites of these bombings. Rescue and medical personnel are currently working in these areas. Given the ongoing bombardment, Prokudin has advised Kherson's residents to avoid going outside. Energoatom, Ukraine's state nuclear power plant operator, insured all 4 of its nuclear plants in the country for damage potentially caused by a nuclear incident in June. The insurance contract, which totals over $5.135 billion, stipulates that should the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant currently under Russian control be detonated, Ukraine could receive insurance compensation once the plant is freed from the occupiers. This condition is due to the plant currently not being controlled by Ukraine and the only legitimate operator, Energoatom. However, for all other nuclear plants within Ukraine's control, insurance covering potential nuclear damage from a nuclear incident is fully effective. Such exclusions relating to military causes of nuclear incidents have been included in previous Energoatom insurance contracts and align with global standard practices. Energoatom underlines its compliance with all national and international legislation concerning civil liability insurance for nuclear damage. Despite Russia's armed aggression against Ukraine and the seizure of Europe's largest nuclear power plant, the Zaporizhzhia NPP, Energoatom strives to prevent an insured event from occurring. According to current legislation, nuclear damage resulting from a nuclear incident, especially those caused by military actions, armed conflicts, civil wars, uprisings, political or civil disturbances, strikes, and terrorist acts, are not eligible for compensation. In case the Zaporizhzhia NPP is detonated by the Russians, several regions could be affected by evacuation. Recently, on June 20th, US President Biden identified the Russian dictator's use of tactical nuclear weapons as a genuine threat. 2 days later, on June 22nd, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed that Ukrainian intelligence received information about Russia considering a terrorist attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which could result in a radiation leak. Consequently, headquarters have been set up in Ukraine to respond to a potential terrorist attack at the ZNPP, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs has issued the first instructions. Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has accused Ukraine, Canada, Sweden, and the UK of allegedly exploiting their lawsuit against Iran for political purposes. The lawsuit was filed with the UN International Court of Justice and is related to Iran's shooting down of Ukraine International Airlines flight PS 752 in 2020. The Iranian ministry maintains that an independent technical group was established promptly after the plane was shot down. According to the statement, Iran is making a sincere effort to investigate the incident with transparency and utmost seriousness. It also claims that Iran has assisted and quickly facilitated visas for over 50 specialists and experts from Ukraine and Canada to visit the crash site. Additionally, Iran said that a technical report was prepared after the investigation was concluded, with the involvement of experts from France, the United States, Ukraine, Canada, and the UK. The report was reportedly well received by most of these experts. Tehran's military prosecutor's office independently conducted a detailed and thorough investigation, according to Iran's internal laws and regulations and based on its legal jurisdiction, the statement asserts. Furthermore, Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has expressed its willingness to participate in joint negotiations with the governments of the 4 countries. The aim of these negotiations, as stated by the ministry, is to demonstrate goodwill and prevent the use of this tragic incident for political purposes. The ministry is waiting for a response from these countries to continue negotiations at a determined time. The statement adds that the request for negotiations from these countries was essentially a means to achieve their political goals and interests, as they referred the case to the UN International Court of Justice. On the night of July 10, 11, multiple explosions were reported in the Odessa Oblast following an air raid warning. The Ukrainian news agency Suspilne reported that there were several instances of explosions in the district of Odessa. Local news outlet Dumska also confirmed the explosions and noted the operation of the air defense system in the region. As the night progressed, Dumska updated their report at 3:36, stating that the explosions continued and that the air defense system was still in operation. However, by 4:10, an all-clear signal was given in the Odessa Oblast, suggesting that the immediate threat had passed. On an unspecified date, heavy artillery was used by Russian forces to strike the Nikopol district in the Dnipropetrovsk region of Ukraine, according to Serhiy Lysak, the head of the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Military Administration. His statement was reported by Ukrinform and shared via Telegram. According to Lysak, the Russian forces targeted the Marinets community in the evening before striking Nikopol after 1 a.m. He emphasized that, despite the attack, there were no reported casualties. The extent of the damage caused by the Russian shelling is yet to be determined. Lysak's report is part of a larger context of ongoing conflict. In the 24 hours preceding his report, around 30 combat engagements were recorded. The enemy continues to concentrate its efforts primarily on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Marinka directions, where heavy fighting continues. In a major escalation, Russia instigated a robust drone attack during the night of July 11th, targeting port infrastructure used for grain storage in southern Ukraine. Natalia Humeniuk, the head of the Joint Press Center at the Defense Forces of Southern Ukraine, reported this offensive, associating it with Russia's attempts to obstruct a grain trade agreement facilitated by the UN and Turkey. According to Humeniuk, the assault was specifically directed at the port infrastructure where grain reserves were held. She drew attention to the intentionality behind this, as Russian forces have expressed their interest in disrupting the grain accord. Humeniuk revealed that Ukraine had anticipated such an attack, given that cargo planes from Tehran had been observed arriving in Moscow a day prior. She also alerted that there is a possibility of Russia initiating a missile attack on the southern region of Ukraine in the near future. The offensive continued with Russian forces attempting to target a grain terminal in one of the ports in the Odessa region. While a total of 22 drones were neutralized, 2 managed to hit the port facility's administrative building. Ole Kuiper, the head of the Odessa region, confirmed the details of the drone attack launched from the Black Sea waters, involving several waves of Shahed 136 attack drones. Despite their efforts, the enemy's plan to attack the grain terminal was largely thwarted, with only 2 drones hitting the port facility's administrative building. In a separate incident on the same night, Russian forces launched an attack on the capital using Iranian-manufactured drones. However, all airborne threats were neutralized by Ukraine's air defenses. It has been reported that on July 11th, Russian forces used Iranian-made Shahed 136, 131 attack drones to assault various regions in Ukraine, with the air defense forces managing to bring down 26 airborne targets. An enemy artillery barrage on Kherson resulted in 5 casualties, including an 8-year-old boy, all of whom have been admitted to the hospital. This was announced by Oleksandr Prokudin, head of Kherson Regional Military Administration. According to Prokudin, the individuals injured in the Russian shelling attack on Kherson were an 8-year-old boy, diagnosed with moderate injuries, who was in his home's backyard during the shelling. Other victims included an elderly man, 86, who suffered severe wounds to his head, neck, chest, arms, and legs due to shrapnel. A woman, 56, and a man, 52, also suffered moderate injuries. An additional person in Kandika was also wounded. Prokudin provided this update via a post on the Telegram platform on Tuesday. It should be noted that Russian forces reportedly targeted residential areas in Kherson the same day. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, has made the significant decision to eliminate the Membership Action Plan (MAP) phase for Ukraine, though it has not yet issued an invitation to join the alliance, as confirmed by NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg at the summit in Vilnius. Stoltenberg indicated that Ukraine would be invited to join NATO when all allies concur and pre-established conditions are satisfied. He emphasized that NATO member nations have assured that Ukraine is destined to be part of the alliance and concurred on eliminating the MAP prerequisite. This decision changes Ukraine's path to membership from a 2-stage process to a singular step, said the NATO Secretary General. Stoltenberg also announced the approval to commence the Ukraine-NATO Council, with the inaugural session planned for July 12th. This date will also witness the unveiling of a comprehensive package of measures intended to accelerate Ukraine's path towards NATO membership. The NATO chief outlined plans to execute multi-year support programs for Ukraine, aimed at facilitating the country's transition from Soviet military standards to Western ones. Ukraine has consistently expressed its desire to receive a political invitation to join the alliance at the NATO summit in Vilnius, understanding that actual membership cannot be contemplated until the ongoing war concludes. In response to the recent developments, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his intent to attend the NATO summit in Vilnius and voiced his criticism over the alliance's indecisiveness regarding Ukraine's membership. Researchers at the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, have concluded that the armed forces of Ukraine, over a 5-week counteroffensive period, have regained nearly the same amount of territory as Russian forces seized in half a year. As per the report, Ukrainian forces, as of July 10th, have placed Russian ground communication lines and Bakhmut under their fire control. Assertions from both Ukrainian and Russian sources suggest that Ukrainian forces are making headway on the Bakhmut front and its southwestern periphery, with certain geographical factors potentially offering the Ukrainian soldiers a firepower upper hand. Moreover, the analysts highlighted that Ukrainian forces were partaking in counteroffensive maneuvers in at least 3 distinct frontline zones on July 10th. Using their collection of geographical data, ISW has concluded that since the commencement of the Ukrainian counteroffensive on June 4th, Ukrainian forces have recaptured an estimated 253 square kilometers of territory. The report notes a discrepancy between the Ukrainian and ISW data due to differing calculation methodologies. Comparatively, Russian troops have taken control of about 282 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory since January 1st. Hence, within a 5-week span, Ukrainian forces have nearly equaled the territorial gains that Russian troops achieved over a 6-month period. Access to the occupied town of Novoaleksiyevka in the Kherson region has been barred by the Russian military, following an incident at an ammunition depot. This information has been made available by Henichesk UA, as relayed by Ukrinform. According to local reports, an explosion occurred at a former coal warehouse of the railway station in Novoaleksiyevka, which had been repurposed by the Russians into an ammunition depot. The subsequent detonation lasted more than 3 hours. While calm has since been restored in the village, Russian forces have restricted entry into the area. In the aftermath of the explosion, local residents living near the ammunition depot and the railway line took the initiative to evacuate to the center of Novoaleksiyevka. Following the end of the detonation, Russian soldiers moved around the houses, instructing residents to gather their identification documents and essential items and relocate to the village center. Some residents managed to reach the center of Novoaleksiyevka. The explosion mainly resulted in broken windows and damaged roofs, but all residents are reported to be safe. Earlier reports indicated that an enemy ammunition depot located in Novoaleksiyevka, Kherson region, under temporary occupation, was obliterated. During the night, the area near the elevator, which had been converted into an ammunition depot by the occupiers, was targeted by unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, leading to a detonation lasting more than 3 hours. As NATO leaders are gearing up to convey an encouraging message to Kyiv about its prospective place in the alliance, Russia has cautioned Europe about the dire repercussions it could face should the conflict escalate. Senior Russian security negotiator Konstantin Gavrilov, who operates out of Vienna, in an interview with Russia's state-run RIA news agency, warned that Europe would be the first to bear the brunt of catastrophic consequences in the event of an escalation of the war. Gavrilov criticized the United States, asserting it showed minimal interest in the fate of Europe. He accused Washington of aiming to weaken and destabilize Russia. In a similar vein, Anatoly Antonov, Russia's ambassador to the United States, stated that steps were being taken to shape local public opinion in favor of any anti-Russian resolutions expected to be passed in Vilnius in the ensuing days. The Kremlin voiced on Monday that Ukraine's accession to the alliance would pose a direct threat to Russia's security, to which it would respond unequivocally and robustly. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO members, at a summit in Lithuania, reasserted their commitment on Tuesday to Ukraine's ambition of joining the alliance. This was detailed in the final declaration issued by the 31-member consortium. The document reiterated the pledge made at the 2008 NATO summit in Bucharest, which stated that Ukraine would eventually become a NATO member. It also acknowledged that Ukraine had progressed beyond the requirement for a membership action plan, exhibiting significant advancements in its reform agenda, and becoming more politically integrated and interoperable with the alliance. The progress will be routinely evaluated by NATO foreign ministers through annual national programs. The alliance has also committed to aiding Ukraine in executing these reforms as part of its journey towards complete membership in the future. The invitation for Ukraine to join NATO will be extended once a consensus is reached among allies and all preconditions are fulfilled. NATO leaders underscored the importance of Ukraine's security to both the individual member states and the alliance in its entirety. To facilitate Ukraine's deeper integration with NATO, the alliance agreed on a significant package of political and practical assistance. This includes the formation of the NATO-Ukraine Council and the continued priority of providing urgently required non-lethal assistance to Ukraine under NATO's Comprehensive Assistance Package, CAP. Since the Madrid summit, NATO allies and partners have pledged more than 500 million euros towards CAP's implementation. As of 18 o'clock on Tuesday, exact date not specified, the Aviation Division of the Ukrainian Defense Forces had conducted 14 strikes on areas where Russian occupying forces, their weapons and military equipment were concentrated, according to operational information on the Russian invasion published on the Facebook page of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In addition to this, they had also performed 3 strikes on enemy anti-aircraft missile systems. Throughout the day, Ukrainian missile troops and artillery units targeted and hit 3 command points, 10 artillery means in firing positions, 1 air defense unit, and 1 electronic warfare station of the Russian occupiers. The report does not provide further details such as the extent of the damage inflicted or the effect of these strikes on the progression of the conflict. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal, a secret unit of the Federal Security Service, FSB, has been keeping surveillance on high-ranking Americans and infiltrating diplomats' residences in Russia. The report is based on statements from American and European diplomats, incarcerated Americans in Russia, and Russian journalists. The Department of Counterintelligence Operations of the FSB, a covert unit of the Russian Special Service, is alleged to be responsible for the surveillance and wiretapping. It's difficult to confirm the department's involvement in every incident, but U.S. officials and close allies have noted that law enforcement agencies often want their targets to know they're under surveillance. Agents have reportedly been leaving deliberate traces of their presence, such as a burnt cigarette on a toilet lid or unwashed feces in the toilets of diplomats' homes. In addition to spying on diplomats, the department has reportedly been used by President Putin to monitor Western journalists in Russia since the early years of his presidency. The department arrested American journalist Ivan Hershkovich in March of this year. Western officials and a former Russian Special Service employee told the newspaper that Putin personally received information before and after Hershkovich's arrest. The FSB accuses Hershkovich of espionage, alleging that he was tasked by the United States to gather classified information about a military-industrial complex enterprise. If found guilty, Hershkovich could face up to 20 years in prison in Russia. The U.S. has confirmed it's in discussions with Russia about a potential exchange for the journalist. The Russian government's measures have been labeled as a form of intimidation to those who do not support Putin's policies. Recently, Russia decided to shut down the Finnish Consulate General in St. Petersburg, citing Finland's anti-Russian policy as the reason. It has been reported that Russian Lieutenant General Oleg Sokov has been killed in an attack in Berdyansk, an occupied territory in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, Ukraine. This was announced on July 11th by Petro Andriushchenko, an advisor to the mayor of Mariupol. Prior to this, in September 2022, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine had reported that Sokov had been injured near Svatove in Luhansk Oblast due to a Ukrainian strike. Sokov had been the commander of the 144th Motorized Rifle Division of the 20th Combined Arms Army of the Russian Federation since August 2022. He was promoted to the rank of lieutenant general in 2023. Apart from the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Sokov also participated in Russia's 2 wars against Chechnya and the war in Syria. Further details surrounding the attack that led to Sokov's death have not been provided at this time. The armed forces of Ukraine have reported a surge in the number of Russian soldiers surrendering on the Tavria front. Over a period of 24 hours, 19 Russian soldiers surrendered to Ukrainian forces, a significant increase compared to the previous day, when 10 soldiers were captured. This high number of surrenders, particularly during the summer, and amidst the Tavria Group's offensive operations, is seen as indicative of poor morale and demotivation within the enemy ranks. Simultaneously, the Ukrainian military is maintaining a defensive stance around Marinka and Avdiivka, located in the Donetsk Oblast. This suggests that while making some gains, Ukrainian forces are also having to protect key strategic points against the Russian offensive. The overall situation appears to be one of significant conflict and struggle, with shifting dynamics on the battlefield. The mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov, has reported that Russia is escalating its troop presence in the occupied territory of Zaporizhzhia region, including in and around the city of Melitopol. The strategic goal of this move appears to be the securing of a land corridor to Crimea, a region previously annexed by Russia from Ukraine in 2014. Fedorov revealed the arrival of new military units from South Ossetia in the village of Obin, which is just 5 kilometers from Melitopol. In Mikhailivka, civilians are reportedly being evicted from private housing to accommodate the military. Furthermore, barracks have been established in Melitopol, using a local distillery as their base. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has confirmed that the Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to conduct offensive actions on several fronts, including Melitopol, Berdyansk, and Bakhmut. These developments point to an intensification of the conflict in this region, highlighting the strategic importance of these locations for both Russia and Ukraine. The use of Iranian-made Shahed 136-131 attack drones by Russian forces in the ongoing conflict with Ukraine marks a new escalation. On the night of July 11, 2023, it is reported that a total of 28 such drones were used in attacks against Ukrainian targets, originating from the southeastern direction of Primorsko-Akhtarsk. However, Ukrainian air defense forces reportedly managed to shoot down 26 of these attack drones, thanks to effective coordination between different units of the defense forces. Other types of drones were also taken down, including a Zala reconnaissance drone, 3 Lancet-type attack drones, and 4 operational tactical reconnaissance drones. In response, Ukrainian forces conducted over 20 group airstrikes on Russian positions. In addition to these latest engagements, Ukrainian air defenses reportedly downed over 150 Shahed drones and 140 cruise missiles in June. The northern region of Sumy is also bolstering its air defense capabilities and is in the final stages of developing a modern regional air target detection system. These measures underscore Ukraine's continued efforts to defend its airspace and neutralize threats posed by the increasing use of drones in modern warfare.